So hello and welcome to another video by Adrian David from Pure Electric. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the state of electrical installation condition reports, primarily around the landlord and sort of selling industry, house selling industry, because of a few things that have happened recently that have prompted me to do this video. So one of the questions that I want people to think about and ask themselves is, what has happened to EICRs? I know, is this a recent thing? Is this because of the recent landlord changes back in 2020? Or is this a systematic failure of the system back to 2000s? Has it always been there? I guess is what I want people to think about. Because I've been sort of searching online. If you type in, fraudulent EICRs, in fact, I can probably show you these. Let's get this up. Okay, so looking on Google, I sort of typed in, poor quality EICRs, and you can see there's lots of things that sort of pop up. Basically, around standards falling, too many people doing it, registered electricians that aren't doing what they should be doing. Sitting Guilds 2391 was considered too difficult, which is true. Now it's been watered down to allow everyone to pass, and people getting talked through the exam. And this is obviously a recent post. I think this is the new IET forum, and it talks about this a lot. Okay, there's a video here. David Savory's done one on EICR. So obviously someone's picked up on. I haven't seen the video myself, but I can't comment. But this is a state of affairs at the moment that needs addressing, in my opinion. So there's that. There's rogue electrician scam. People have ended up with stupid EICRs that are invalid. Be warned. Shocking electrical changes for residential landlords. Fraudulent electrical certificates that have been happening, EICR unsatisfactory, but you still have the issues, the money-making scam, it's everywhere. There's loads of it. This has been going on for a very long time. Look, this person here's had an EICR done, and the person wanted to change their consumer unit. Okay, and this is a common theme. So, make sure if you're going to get an EICR done, make sure you do your groundwork first. Find somebody reputable. Now, how do you find somebody reputable? And that is something that I'm going to get onto in this video. Here, first, I'm going to show you a certificate that I recently saw on a social media website. Okay, and I have not seen an EICR this bad before, so I'm just going to quickly show you it. I haven't actually looked through it too much. We'll do it together. But effectively, here is the EICR. And as you can see straight away, I mean, some of this information has been deleted out by the guy who shared it with me, because obviously doesn't want to get into any problems, any backlash. So you can see what's been deleted: details of the contractor, details of the client, details of the installation, the address. Landlord report. This was completed. Where are we? So inspection testing 2021, this was done. So there was a previous report that was done, but it's come up as satisfactory. That looks like the estimated age of the electrical installation is 1,015 years. It's in good order. And again, they've removed the signature here, but here's the date. So this has been done recently. This is a new EICR. Here is a list of observations. Okay, so we've got nothing in the way of observations. There's nothing on there to talk about whatsoever. So far, so good, you think? And then we get here. So obviously fixed wiring only, no floorboards to be lifted, which is fair enough. It's supposed to be minimal intrusion unless you really have to. 20% of each circuit tested. When we get on, you'll laugh at that, whether that's actually being done or not. Again, TNCS, 1 phase 2 wire, nothing that's really jumping out here. 16 mil main earth, bonding's okay to gas and water by the looks of things. Okay, so, you know, ticking some boxes. And then all of a sudden, it starts to go very questionable. Now, anyone that knows what they're looking at will instantly say that it's very rare that you will need every box ticked on an installation. So, for instance, instantly here, it talks about parallel supplies or switched alternative sources. So this is things like solar PVs or generators. So unless they had solar PV on the installation, that wouldn't need ticking, or a backup generator. And you can see every single box has been ticked. You know, adequacy of AFDDs where specified, tick. I doubt it's got AFDDs. I'd be very surprised. As we go down, look, the ticks continue. Okay, all the way through, every box has been ticked. Again, the signature's been removed. It is impossible. And then we get onto the real bone of contention with this certificate, and that is the schedule of circuit details and test results. Now, nothing has been removed up here other than the signature here. You can see that's been done. This is as it was given to the homeowner, and there is no information on there. It doesn't say how many circuits there are. It doesn't. You don't know how big the consumer unit is. You don't know what protective devices are. This is a 15-minute EICR. Apparently, the guy was there 15 minutes. You get what you pay for 15 minutes. This does not prove anything. Okay, and if we go all the way back up to the start, it says, where are we? Satisfactory. Now, how can you prove that this is satisfactory if you haven't tested anything? Okay, so this certificate prompted me to do this video. Okay, and I'll explain why, because we're going to get onto another certificate where it's actually cost the homeowner money and nearly the sale of a house. Okay, and something needs to be done. So what's prompted all of this to happen? Well, back in June 2020, landlords all of a sudden had to bring their houses up to standard. Okay, it's nothing new. It's really been there for a while. It's just that it's kind of been enforced. Now, what's now got to happen is that an EICR, which is an electrical installation condition report, has to be completed a minimum of every 5 years or change of tenancy, okay, which on paper is a great thing, okay? The reality is that loads of people have now jumped on the bandwagon. The City and Guilds inspection testing course, or the EAL inspection testing course, the 2391, has become awash with people from all walks of life that have never even picked up a screwdriver or seen an electrical installation, let alone tested one. And they've done a 7-day course, been guided through the exam, and off they go out into the world, not knowing what they're doing or what they're talking about. Okay. And the other problem we have is that the electrical industry is it's not policed. Let's put it that way. There's no one in the electrical industry that has any authoritative powers. The HSE leave it up to the competent person schemes and don't get involved, quite frankly. And whether that's due to budget cuts or whatever, I have no idea. So we are in a situation now where there's low competency people going out into the world plying their trade, which is frankly dangerous. And these are the reasons for these shoddy reports. Going back in the day, the 2391, which was the City and Guilds inspection and testing qualification, was the benchmark of electricians. Okay, it was a closed book exam. The failure rate for that was so high that they decided to change it. And the reason it was so high was because it proved competency. Fast forward, and now the pass rate is a lot higher. It seems like it's impossible to fail. And now we are where we are, effectively. Okay, this is off of the Electrical Safety First website. So it's an introduction guide to help landlords, all right? And it sort of talks through the ins and outs of why this happens. So again, it kind of says here that around 70 deaths and 350,000 injuries in UK homes are caused by electrical faults and electrical equipment. Almost half of all domestic fires are caused by electricity. Now, that is a shocking, staggering statistic if that is true. And I've got to say that it doesn't surprise me, considering how bad things actually are. There will be approximately 20,000 accidental electrical fires in homes, resulting in around 50 deaths and 3,500 injuries. So what is the answer to all this? So apparently, right, that there are going to be people, competent person schemes, that are going to vet and monitor their members, which we'll get onto later. So here's the law. I've highlighted a few bits. The first one that I want people to make sure they understand is that if the inspection reveals any action work that needs to be taken, this remedial work must be carried out within 28 days, okay? And it must meet the British standard BS 7671 with appropriate certification issued, okay? And I'm going to show you something somewhere where it says in BS 7671 that you cannot bring the installation up to the current regulations if it complied when it was installed, okay? Because it would still, if it was safe then, it still is safe. So anybody telling you to change your consumer unit because it doesn't meet fire regulations, or it's not fire rated, or it's not made of metal, or it doesn't have RCD protection, may be committing fraud, okay? May, and it is worth a second opinion, all right? And watching this video and checking through all the guidance that's out there. Okay, so just be warned, be careful. Something else that I want landlords to be aware of is that, as the landlord says down here, you are responsible for making sure that the person who completes the check is suitably competent. Okay, using an electrician or firm that is a member of an accredited registration scheme operated by a recognized body will give you the confidence that this has been achieved. Now, in my experience, that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not the only person that thinks that. If you search around online, you will find that there's many people that feel the way that I do. The competent person schemes are supposed to check competence, okay, which is a very difficult thing to prove. Okay, so how do they do that? Well, they assess 2 of your jobs a year, which you get to choose. So you can take the assessor to 2 jobs. They don't even have to be your jobs. I've never had to prove that that work is mine. There just needs to be a certificate for it. And you choose the job. So you could do 2 good jobs a year, and the rest could be absolute dog crap, and no one would know any different, okay? And that's just how it is right now. It says in here as well, in short, a landlord could be prosecuted if someone is injured on their landlord premises, regarding of whether the visitor is there lawfully or trespassing. Now, they're putting a lot of pressure on landlords here, okay? So a landlord, to negate their responsibility, is going to try and find somebody that's competent and registered. They're going to follow the badges. And this is where it all falls down, in my opinion, because those badges do not prove competency, okay, which we're going to get onto later. I've also highlighted up here that you can do work in your house, and you don't need to use a registered person. You just need to notify building control before the work starts out. Okay, and I would highly suggest doing this to people if you've got a good electrician that you trust and issues the correct certificates, because they may not be registered. I decided to stop being registered because I didn't believe in the system anymore, and I would notify my work through building control directly. So you don't have to go through a competent person scheme or someone that's Part P registered. Part P is not a qualification. Part P is purely a building regulation that needs to be met, okay? And building regulations are enforced by the local area building control. Although they don't want anything to do with Part P, as I've found out, and they instead try to refer you to the competent person schemes, and the competent person schemes have no authoritative powers. They can't prosecute anybody or anything like that, okay? So you have to go through LABC. Okay. I've just also made a note here that regular visual safety checks do not replace the need for a periodic inspection to be carried out every 5 years. So there are people out there at the moment that are doing what they call a visual inspection, which is literally where they walk around the house, have a visual look, put their finger in the air, and say, yep, I'm happy to say that's safe without checking anything. And that is called a visual inspection. That is not the same thing as an EICR. It will not protect you in court if anybody gets hurt or injured, okay? So worth reading through this. Again, this is on the Electrical Safety First website. It's a free download for landlords. You can look at this. Okay, some things that I've highlighted here. So all certificates and reports should include schedules of inspections and test results. Okay, without the test results, what does it prove? I've sort of highlighted some bits down here that you guys should read for, so please pause the video, save me having to read through. And all I want you to know is that in the event of a claim that injury or fire was caused by an electrical installation, these certificates are evidence which will help show that the installation was installed to a satisfactory standard. And you will start to realize very quickly, if you start investigating this, that there are a lot of problems with electrical certificates at the moment that fall well below the safe standard set out by BS 7671, even with people that have got all the badges. So again, here, you know, everywhere you look, it keeps telling people to go for registered electricians to prove that the electrical work is of a high standard. And yet, you know, as I'm going to show you with this EICR that comes up in a minute, it doesn't matter what badge you've got, people still are incompetent, okay? And that's what I want you to take away from this video. What else? It says here that a copy of this schedule should be kept next to the consumer unit or fuse box for information purposes, and be provided to the landlord and the tenant as well. A couple of things down here. It talks about a C1, which means there's a danger present. Basically, somebody is going to get an electric shock. A C2 is potentially dangerous. That means that something else has to happen in order for that to become dangerous. So for instance, if you didn't have bonding, like an earth cable going to your gas or water, that's a C2, because if it was an electrical fault and that pipe work became live, then someone would get an electric shock. So that's how you want to look through this. Things like further investigation, that's where extra checks need to be done as soon as possible. And as soon as you've got further investigations or limitations on the certificate, that can cause you problems. Definitely with further investigation, I think you have to instantly make that a unsatisfactory report until that has been carried out, which we'll get onto later as well. So again, we'll just skip through this. This is worth looking through if you're a landlord. Anything on there? I've just put up here that loose connections in electrical equipment and parts of the electrical installation, such as sockets, can result in fire. Incorrectly selected fuses or circuit breakers can also lead to overheated cables. Now, just because you've got a new installation on a new build, don't be lulled into a false sense of security. I've come across whole building estates that have had lots of consumer unit fires because of the way that the electrics was installed and not properly checked. So be very wary. Don't take things on face value. If you are looking to buy a house, always get it inspected. And if you're looking to sell, it might be worth getting one done as well to prove that that house is, you know, available to sell safely to the next person. And it'll save you a lot of hassle if you do get it done, if you choose the right person. Okay. And again, you know, I've highlighted all this all the way through this, everywhere you look online, even when you look through Part P, you look through building regulations, it constantly tells you to keep seeing these people. These are the people that are going to prove competency. These are the people that are going to provide you with a qualified electrician to your house. Now, it's worth noting for all of you guys out there that don't know, especially landlords, homeowners, that just because you've contacted these people and you think you're getting an electrician, you may not be getting an electrician. You may be getting something called a domestic installer. And a domestic installer and an electrician are not the same thing. An electrician has completed 3 years at college. They've completed an MVQ portfolio. They've done an AM2 endpoint assessment. They've proved their competency beyond all reasonable doubt, supposedly. And this takes 3 to 4 years. Okay. The domestic installer route, somebody can go from having no experience in the industry, pushing a pen, sitting on a desk, stacking shelves, and 3 weeks later, after being helped, guided through some exams to make sure they pass, be out on the streets having one of these badges with the name domestic installer. Okay, so would you want somebody in your house that's only had 3 weeks of training, and then there they are telling you they're an electrician when actually they're not? So technically, I'm sure there's something in the law that says if you phone up and ask for an electrician, then an electrician is what should turn up. And the industry knows what an electrician is. They've got some guidance out there under the TESP, but they seem to bandy everyone together under these badges. So all I'm saying is just be really careful what you're expecting and what you're looking for. What you don't want really is somebody that's had 3 weeks training, if you're not happy with that. If you're expecting somebody that's done a proper apprenticeship and knows their trade inside out, and you feel confident in that, okay, and that builds confidence for you, then that's who you want turning up, not somebody that you may feel has only done 3 weeks of training, and then that doesn't inspire trust for you. Okay, so again, if you're happy with someone that's had 3 weeks training, no questions, no qualms there, you crack on. Personally, I know what I would prefer. Right, so this statement, I'll just move this out of the way. This was on the back of the EICR that we're going to go through, right? And it kind of tells you that this EICR is going to reveal electrical circuits that are a problem, tell you the potential hazards, identify defective DIY work, basically comprehensive report that's going to help you make a judgment as to whether your installation needs remedial work or something. It's kind of building confidence in the system. Okay, let me move that back up there. And then it talks about the electrical safety regulations. Again, by law, this is what needs to happen. And it mentions all these things, like Part P and England and the law in England and Wales, and these schemes that are going to help you do that. Use a registered electrician. Again, look, keeps telling you with the building control regulations compliance certificate to prove it meets the requirements of Part P. It keeps telling you to do all this stuff, and it talks about British standards, and this is the regulations. Okay, what does this sound like to you? I mean, does it reassure you that you're going to get a comprehensive and thorough report? I mean, to me, when I first read that, if I didn't know better, I'd think, God, this really is going to do exactly what I think it's going to do. This is reassuring. I feel safe in the knowledge that this is what's going to happen. So, hold that thought in your head, and when we get to the end of this PowerPoint, you ask yourself those questions again. So what is the problem? This is in my opinion. Okay, I'll have to make that clear. This is in my opinion. In England, there is argument to what routes are regulated. Okay, to me, it appears that anybody can set up a training provider with little to no knowledge and start cracking out qualifications, as soon as obviously if they've got the accreditation that they need. To be an electrician in the UK, you don't even need to be qualified. You need to be competent. And competent is a very difficult word to use. Now, how do you define competent? Well, obviously I Googled it. This is the definition of competent that came up, okay? Having suitable or sufficient skill, knowledge, experience, etc., for some purpose, properly qualified. So again, if you were expecting an electrician to come up, you would expect that somebody properly qualified is going to turn up. And that, unfortunately, is not the case in the UK. And the reason it's not the case is because the electrical regulations, even though it uses the word regulations, are a non-statutory document, although they do reference the Electricity at Work Regulations 1989, which we will get onto, which is a statutory document. But interestingly, I would love to find out how many people have been prosecuted under the Electricity at Work Regulations in a domestic environment for EICRs, and I am going to make a Freedom of Information request to see what's going on. In fact, that's just come to me now that I'm going to do that. So I don't think I've thought about it too much. That's just occurred to me. So I have met many people in my time that feel that they are competent. You know, the amount of houses that I've turned up to and they said, oh, you know, the electrics are fine. My husband's done the job. He knows what he's doing. And the husband turns around and he's like, yep, I know what I'm doing. And you look at the electrics and you think, Jesus, who the hell has done this? You know, this is not safe. And you start pulling it apart, at which point they don't like to hear that. Okay. And you usually find that competent people are usually really competent up until the point where you prove them wrong. Because let's face it, you don't know if you are incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. It's as simple as that. I used to think that I was competent until recently, and I realized I didn't know as much as what I thought I did. You know, I did 3 years at college, went out thinking, well, I must be competent. I've passed this qualification. The amount of mistakes I made in those first 5 years, you know, I shudder. I dread to think. And I'm quite a conscientious person. I like to think about what I'm doing and learn from my mistakes and all this stuff. And I do CPD and I read up on it. And, you know, it took me 5 years after I finished college to become competent, to become safe. So again, I refer you back to those people that have had 3 weeks training. Okay, I shudder when I think of them. Right. So, Electricity at Work Regulations 1989. For those of you that don't know, there's a picture of the book. It is online. It is a free download. So in there, Regulation 16, persons to be competent to prevent danger and injury. Says here that no person shall be engaged in any work activity where technical knowledge or experience is necessary to prevent danger or where appropriate injury, unless he, should say they, possess such knowledge or experience or is under such degree of supervision as may be appropriate having regard to the nature of the work. 236, the object of the regulation is to ensure that people are not placed at risk due to their own lack of competence in dealing with electrical equipment or that of others. So again, when we go through this next EICR, I want you to ask that question at the end. Do we think that this person that's done this EICR in this person's house and is registered with the badges that everyone's told to look for, do we think that they fulfill that criteria under Electricity at Work Regulation? Because I don't think they are, and that's what I'm here to prove. It then goes on to say technical knowledge or experience. Okay, the scope of technical knowledge or experience should include adequate knowledge of electricity, adequate experience of the electrical work being carried out. Okay, so again, these people that have not been in the industry and have only done 3 weeks of training, you know, how much experience of the electrical work have they had? People that are getting the inspection and testing qualification and have gone from stacking shelves to 7 days of training and then going out and testing homeowners' houses, you know, with kids and people inside, you know, that are at risk. How much experience have they really got? Okay. Do they comply with the Electricity at Work Regulations 1989? Because in my opinion, they don't. You know, I ask you guys watching this video to ask yourselves the same questions. They need to have adequate understanding of the system to be worked on and practical experience of that class of system. Again, I refer back to exactly what I just said. 7 days training, inspection and testing, and off they go. 3 weeks of training. Domestic installer. I can't see it myself. Understanding of the hazards which may arise during the work and the precautions which need to be taken. Again, unless you've been sitting with someone for a long period of time and been in every single situation that you could possibly be in, that's never going to happen, is it? So again, you need something. Like I said, I did 3 years at college. 5 years after that, I would say that I didn't even get to that level. And that's 8 years in the trade. And I'm being completely honest with yourselves. The ability to recognize at all times whether it is safe for work to continue. All right. So that's what the Electricity at Work Regulations say. It's also repeated in BS 7671. So skilled person electrically, person who possesses, as appropriate to the nature of the electrical work to be undertaken, adequate education, training, and practical skills, and who is able to perceive risks and avoid hazards which electricity can create. Now, in my opinion, the only way that you can achieve that is to be at college for a sufficient amount of time from experience. And like I said, 5 years after that, I was still making mistakes, still learning, okay? And I was out on my own. You know, I wasn't still employed. Was I a skilled person electrically? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I should not have been out on my own. But I had this piece of paper that I thought made everything a-okay, and I was enrolled with a competent person scheme. I was with the NIC, EIC straight away. So I thought, well, I must be competent. I've got the badge, I've got these certificates, I've finished college, I've been doing the job for 3 years. I must be a skilled person electrically. It's only now looking back that I've realized that I was incompetent, okay? Goes on to call somebody an instructed person electrically. So that is a person adequately advised or supervised by a skilled person. So this could be an apprentice or a labourer of some description, but they need to be supervised adequately. So again, people that are sending apprentices out to test, should they really be doing that? I've got to question it personally, unless they're supervised, unless they've got adequate skills to be able to do that. Again, it references Regulation 16, Electricity at Work Regulations, 1989, which we've just spoken about. Okay, so that's what it says in BS 7671. There's even guidance on the certificate which is issued. So this could be the EICR, this could be the EIC, which is Electrical Installation Certificate, this could be the Minor Work Certificate. It says similar things, okay? So for items classified in the observations as C1, danger present, safety of those using the installation is at risk, and it is recommended that a skilled person or persons competent in electrical installation work undertakes the necessary remedial work. And that's the same for a C2, okay? But it also goes on to say that is a matter of urgency. So one's immediately, C1 is immediately, C2 is a matter of urgency. It then goes on to say that where it has been stated in the observation section that a code of FI has been given, so further investigation, the inspection has revealed an apparent deficiency which may result in a C1 or C2 and could not, due to the extent of limitations of the inspection, be fully identified. Such observations should be investigated without delay. Further examination of the installation will be necessary to determine the nature and extent of the apparent deficiency. Now, because there's a possible C1, C2 there, you have to question yourself as whether people can actually still give a satisfactory report. So all you landlords that have got FI, further investigation, limitation, all that kind of stuff, the limitations you have to be made of before the testing takes place, and agree with them at the end as well. And anything with an FI is instantly, in my opinion, an unsatisfactory report until the further investigation has been investigated. For safety reasons, electrical installation should be re-inspected at appropriate levels by a skilled person or persons competent in such work. There's that word again, competent, keeps popping up, but how do we define it? It's a good question. Right, so this is why I've decided to do this video, because something has to be done. This EICR has caused this homeowner financial risk, okay? In fact, they lost £5,000 on the sale of their house from this report and the report from the gas, the boiler. And the boiler was tested fine, it all came up fine, and the gas engineer said to them, to the homeowner that it is a bit old, it probably should be changed. I mean, that doesn't say that it's dangerous, that's just an opinion. And because of that, the homeowner then reported that back to the solicitor, and they got knocked down on their price. This EICR that I'm about to show you, there was a price given for that, okay? So I think it came in around £1,000. And that too was taken off the sale of the house. Now, £1,000 is a lot of money, as well as the stress, feeling that you're living in an unsafe home. So as you can see, I've censored some of the main stuff that's going to limit the liability that I'm going to have with this video. But as you can see, there's some things on the face of it. I mean, that all looks hunky-dory. As you start to go through, though, you start to notice that some things don't quite add up. Okay, so in this instance, I believe that this was an empty flat. The flat only contained pendants, light switches, no dimmers. Lamps could easily be removed, so there's no downlights, so just plug-in lamps. There was no reason why insulation resistance testing couldn't be carried out. Okay, and even in guidance notes 3, page 52, it says that if there is any equipment vulnerable to test voltage, you can link the line and neutral conductors together and test between earth, because it's an existing installation. Initial verification where you test between each individual conductor has already been done. So in this occasion, if there is equipment vulnerable to test damage, to test voltage, you can just link live and neutral, test to earth. So in my opinion, there's no real reason why most people can't do that these days, especially with the invention of USB sockets. Okay, then we've got a bit of a conflicting evidence here. So we've got a fair condition of the installation in terms of electrical safety, but then it's been failed with an unsatisfactory result. That's an oxymoron. That doesn't make sense. How can it be fair in terms of electrical safety but unsatisfactory? Okay, so just check this out when you're looking for your own certificates. So, box hasn't been ticked for short circuit capacity. I don't know why. Again, how do you prove that short circuit capacity for this protective device is okay unless you've proven it? If we look at that protective device, it's been put down as a BS3036 rewirable fuse, which, as you can see from the picture, it clearly isn't. It's either a BS88-2 or a BS1361 type 2A, possibly, or something along those lines. Most definitely not a BS3036. And when I look in the BS7671 or guidance notes 3, they don't go up to 80 amps. Okay, so again, I don't know where this person has got these results from. Already, questions are starting to be asked about competency. For main protective bonding conductors, they've put NA for material and size and haven't checked continuity, which is important because later on they fail it on the size of conductors and a few other things, even though it is in, you can see it kind of in the picture. That 10mm cable there goes off to a small little consumer unit, and out of that goes another 10mm cable, which I believe goes to the bonding. So again, got to question these things. Main switch, number of poles, again, not applicable. Of course it's applicable. It would be very obvious as soon as you open it up, and you would see that there'd be a 2-pole main switch. Now, so far, these are only small little discrepancies, but it does start to put into question the person who's conducted this report and their competency. So, you start looking a bit deeper. And then you notice that conductor material, they've put tape. I've got no idea what that means. I've never seen any tape conductor. Again, could be typo, but, let's push on. And this is where it starts to get really scary, okay? Because you start seeing things that are potentially dangerous, C2, potentially dangerous. So these things need to be addressed urgently, all right? So the first one, provision of earthing bonding label, C2, potentially dangerous. For not having a label on a pipe, potentially dangerous, okay? At worst, it's a C3. Doesn't comply with BS7671. In fact, if you look in the EIC code breakers there, page 19, that is exactly what it states under 514.13.1. It gives a C3. Confirmation of earthing conductor size. They've put limitation, and yet in the particulars at the origin, they've put 16mm. And if we look back to that picture that was up here, you can clearly see 16mm cable coming up the side there, which goes to the consumer unit, which we'll see later on. So again, something's not right here. Accessibility and condition of the main earthing terminal. Again, looking at that picture that we've just looked at, it's easily accessible, and so is the consumer unit. Earthing terminal, you can see it there, green and yellow spot, perfectly accessible. Here's a consumer unit. I don't see any problem with getting to that myself. So who knows? Confirmation of the main protective bonding conductor sizes. They've put a limitation. Now think back to that first page, okay? I haven't brought it back up again, but think back to that first page. They've put that down as not applicable. So either it is applicable or it's not a limitation, okay? And a limitation is if you can't prove that you can find the other end. So for instance, you would see it at one end and the cable disappears off into a wall and then you can't find it. In fact, you probably wouldn't even put that down as a limitation. You would probably put that down as a further investigation required because you need to find the other end of that cable. So in fact, no, I'll take that back. Limitation is completely wrong in this instance. Condition is accessibility of main protective bonding conductors. Again, with the photos, that doesn't make sense because it's easily accessible. Accessibility and condition of other protective bonding conductors. I'd love to know which ones they're talking about. And also, what other bonding conductors that are not covered in BS 7671 are they referring to? Because again, they've put a limitation there. Where's the explanation? Where's the further, where is all this information? So fire rating of consumer unit. Now, they've put down a C2. There's nothing wrong with that consumer unit. You cannot retrospectively bring it up to current regulations. And I'll explain the reason for that. And that is every 3 years, they update the electrical regulations, BS 7671, give or take. And every 9 years, or every 3 amendments, they bring in a new BS 7671, new edition. It would be unrealistic to expect homeowners to keep up with the regs. It would be a constant money pit, and they can't do that. If it was safe when it was installed, then it's safe for continued use. If you can prove that, okay. The only thing they can do is they can code it a C3, which requires improvement, which basically says it's not up to current regulation. So again, in the EICR code breakers book by Nappet, a plastic consumer unit is a C3 if it doesn't have any thermal damage. So those of you that have got EICRs that have been failed because of plastic consumer units, you need to check out that book, get yourself educated. Presence of non-standard mixed color sticker. It's a sticker. The guy's put a limitation. It's either there or it's not. And if it's not there, most of us electricians carry those stickers on the van. It's no hassle to put a sticker on a consumer unit. Again, C3 if it's not there. Improvement recommended, that's it. Protection against electromagnetic effects where cables enter consumer unit. C3, improvement recommended. It's a plastic board. It doesn't conduct electricity. There are no chance of electromagnetic effects or eddy currents. So again, you have to question this person's ability to do this job. So either this person is committing fraud because they want to get extra work, or they are incompetent, or both, okay? You've got to question it. RCDs provided for fault protection. C2, potentially dangerous. Now, I've got to tell you, this homeowner was panicking. Oh my God, house is dangerous, potential danger everywhere. Again, they cannot retrospectively condemn this property if it passed when it was installed, okay? It's a second floor flat. There's no sockets outside that can be used. There was nothing in really zone 1 or zone 2 of any danger. All the cabling that's buried is in earthed metallic conduit, which is allowed. So for additional protection, again, what are they referring to for C2s and additional protection for RCD? And the real cream on the cake here is confirmation of indication that SPD is functional. So again, C2, potentially dangerous. Well, there is no SPD that's been installed in this property. And if you look in the NAPIT code breakers book again, it comes up as a C3. Okay. Now, if the electrician's trying to tell you that you need an SPD, which is a surge protection device caused by lightning strikes, they need to do a calculation to prove that you need one. Okay, simple as that. So if they put this down, ask to see the calculation, get it checked out with a second opinion. Okay, cables correctly supported throughout their run. Got a limitation. The cabling is all built into the fabric of the building. I'm interested to know where these cables that aren't supported actually are. Non-sheath cables protected by enclosure in conduit. They've put a limitation. No evidence, no explanation. Adequacy of protective devices. According to the photos and certificate, the protective devices, check out. The readings are good. They're protecting the right circuits. I don't understand this. There's the consumer unit, okay? You'll see later, it all checks out with what is being installed. So again, so here again, I've spoken about the RCD protection. That doesn't need to be there. Why have they coded it as C3? Provision of additional requirements for protection by RCD, again, still going on. Yes, second floor flat, no outside space. Provision of additional requirements by protection of RCD for cables not concealed at a depth of less than 50 mil. They've put a limitation. Again, all the cabling is inside earthed metallic conduit, okay, which is the CPC for the circuit. So again, this is all irrelevant. It's scaremongering, in my opinion, or incompetence. Provision, see, still going on about RCDs. This regulation is for cables concealed in walls or partitions containing metal parts, so metal stud work, basically. There is no metal stud work in this flat. It's a 1960s council-built bomb-proof flat, okay, low rise. Again, provision of RCD for lighting circuit, for final circuit supplying class 1 light fittings. Again, there aren't any class 1 light fittings. They were all plastic. Band 2 cables segregated from band 1. He's put limitation. Either he saw it or he didn't. If he did, it's a C3, requires improvement at worst. Cables segregated from non-electrical services. Again, another limitation. Again, this guy should either have seen it and coded it, or he hasn't seen it and he can't code it. If he's not sure, it could be a further investigation. You know, if he's not 100% sure, can't quite get your eyes on it or something. But either way, it's a C3 at worst, if you look in the NAPIT code breakers book, unless there is a real danger where you've got single insulated cables next to metallic pipe work, because you've only got one layer of protection. Presence of supplementary bonding conductors. Again, this guy's put a limitation, unless it was required by BS 7671. I don't know why I put 2018 there, but unless it's required by the regulations that were in place when it was installed, again, it should have been coded a C2 if it wasn't installed at the time it was installed, if it had to be there. If it's not there now, I don't know. C2, I don't know. Limitation C2. Again, it's up to the assessor at the time. I wasn't there at the time, so I can't say for sure. But again, looking in the code breakers book, it's a C2, potentially dangerous, but you need an explanation for this one, I believe. Right, so moving on. Again, let me just move this out of the way so you guys can see. This is another case of ticking boxes just for the sake of ticking it. Locations containing a bath or shower not covered by BS 7671. Tick. There's only one bath and shower in there, and it does come under BS 7671, so why tick the box? List any other special installations. Tick. There aren't any. List anything that's not covered by BS 7671. Tick. Again, what is this person doing? They obviously don't know what they're doing. We've got a C2, potentially dangerous, on a 1.5mm flex coming out of the shower isolator. Now, the homeowner claims that the shower is off the tap, so maybe this is just powering a pump or something. There is a 40 amp shower supply. Looks like it's on a piece of 10mm cable when we look at the consumer unit. But again, unless it's been fused down, I can't see where the bit of 1.5mm flex has come from. Potentially C2, no CPC throughout the property. Conduit used as earth, more than acceptable. Can't fail it on that. Only if you're getting funny readings or readings that are too high, or you can prove that are unsafe. Nothing wrong with that. No earth bonding to gas or water. Well, they've put that down as not applicable at the particulars of the origin. And then there's a limitation further up the schedule. So this doesn't add up, okay? Schedule earth bonding labels. As pointed out, this is only a C3. Right, potentially dangerous. No earth fly leads on kitchen and bedroom lights. Well, it does actually say in BS 7671 that if you've got a fixed lug, which I think these do, then you don't need to have fly leads. Although I do fly lead everything because I think it's a lot safer, especially if somebody takes the light switch off, because the light switch, is only earthed if it's through the screws. But again, I haven't been there, so you would need to know. No fire barrier where cable enters DB. According to the EIC code breakers, page 25, if there's no sign of thermal damage, it's a C3 at worst when fixed to a flammable surface. Now, in my understanding of it, there was no thermal effects. Potentially dangerous, no RCD protection. Again, we've spoken about that in great depth. This person's given a C2 for no smoke alarms throughout the property. At no point on this EICR does it talk about smoke alarms, fire protection, anything like that. You can put it down as a note. It's a good idea to help identify the problem to homeowners, to landlords, sorry, because if you're a landlord, you should have fire detection in place. Again, it tells you in that advice from Electrical Safety First, but it's not a part of the certificate, so you can't code it as C2. So again, is this person competent at what they're doing? C2, potentially dangerous, no SPD in the board. Again, we've spoken through that. Okay, socket in boiler cupboard broken. Well, how broken? Do we have access to live parts? We need more of an explanation, evidence needed. And if it was just a broken socket or faceplate, it could easily have been made safe before they left. Improvement recommended, no labels on DB. Why not just put a sticker? We've spoken about that. We carry the stickers. It's easy, unless you're looking for work, unless you're punting for work. And we've spoken about the plastic consumer unit. Now, this one here, where it says circuit 4 leaves the DB in 6mm, and then it's 2 5 sockets. Again, that's not so much of a problem if you've tested it as a ring and you've proved that it's safe. It could be classed as a hybrid circuit. You are able to do this. It just needs a bit of extra checking over and certification to prove that it is safe, but there's nothing wrong with it. So again, further investigation required. Who knows? Again, you'd have to be there to see that. But next, so this is the distribution schedule for the first consumer unit. On the surface, it looks fine, but we've got no DB location. We've got no voltage that's been entered. No signature. Again, this primary overcurrent device appears to be wrong. The overcurrent protective device short circuit, they've put not applicable. So how would you prove that it works if you've put not applicable in the box? They've put down limitation for reference on general sockets for the reference method of the cable. Now that can make a big difference to the loading of the cable, to the loading of the circuit. So I don't know why that's a limitation. That would be easy to see. And same for the lights. And these are the test results. So we've got no ZS at DB. So that's your fault loop path. We've got no prospective fault current tested at the DB. No sign of any equipment vulnerable to testing, so why no insulation resistance testing? And no details of the test instrument. Now that is important because how would they know that the test instrument used for this certificate is calibrated, that it holds a valid certificate? And also, if that device suddenly, a couple of tests down the line, started getting some funny readings, you are supposed to check back through your certificates and check a percentage of those certificates to make sure that the device was working at the time you used it. Okay, it's all in guidance notes 3. They haven't tested insulation resistance. No idea why not. I've just noted as well their insulation test voltage, they put 250 volts, which in BS 7671 should be 500 volts. No supply polarity is being confirmed, and exactly the same scenarios for DB2. Yeah, I don't understand it. And same with these test results as well. Again, I've managed to put there that the test voltage is at 250 when it should be 500. Okay. Now, let's come back to that question. Do you think the person that completed this EICR was a competent and skilled person? Were they able to fulfill Regulation 16? And do you think their technical knowledge and experience was valid and relevant for this certificate? Because interestingly, if we go back through all this, that the accredited body for this is the NIC EIC. Now, the NIC EIC, for those of you that don't know, they are the known brand. So they are just a membership scheme. They have no authoritative powers. They're just a badge. I always describe them as the AA of the electrical world. So they're the NIC EIC are the AA, NAPIT and Alexa are the RAC, okay, and Stroma certification is green flag. That's the easiest way to describe it, because they are just members clubs, and it's just badges. That's all they are at the end of the day. They're just badges. So do we think that that person under that scheme, registered with the NIC EIC competent person scheme, fulfills that criteria? And if not, why not? How did they get to that position of incompetence? And they're not the only ones. I hate to think how many people are out there that are of this level registered with a badge and working in people's homes. So we're getting towards the end now. What can landlords, tenants and the public do? First of all, get a second opinion. All right, don't take these things on face value. If it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, you're getting a funny feeling about that, get a second opinion. Secondly, you can contact the competent person scheme and make a complaint. Under UCAS, which they're registered with, they are required by law to legally log the complaint and fully investigate the situation. Okay, and I've got the proof there direct from UCAS themselves. Okay. So under the CPS, if concerns are raised regarding the competence of a trade person and their compliance with CPS requirements, then it is expected it would be logged and investigated, provided suitable information evidence has been provided to support the concern being raised, which I am going to do with this certificate that I've showed you. And the only constraint is they may not be able to share information with you. If you do not have the time or the expertise to do so, you can ask your trusted electrician to do this for you, because again, under UCAS, it doesn't have to be a homeowner. It can be anyone that can raise concerns. Don't give up, because I've tried complaining about shoddy workmanship, dangerous installations. I've been passed from pillar to post. I've been trying for years to get somebody in government or somebody somewhere to realize what is going on and take stock of the situation. Unless we keep shouting about it and raising it and highlighting it, things are only going to get worse. I mean, I've only been in this trade nearly 20 years, And since 2005, since the start of Part P, I have seen this trade decline to a level below DIY, in my opinion. And something needs to happen. Things need to change. And the only way it's going to change is if we all work together. Homeowners, landlords, tenants, electricians, other tradespeople, carpenters, gas engineers. If we all work together to highlight these problems and these flaws and shine a spotlight on everything that's going on and give these people nowhere to go, then that's the only way it's going to get sorted out, because these companies hate bad publicity. So you need to make noise on social media about it. Start a petition calling for change. All right, you'll be surprised. Again, these companies, they advise government officials. They're not going to want bad publicity. Get in contact. I may be able to help you, although my time and resources are limited, and I do suspect that, you know, once people start getting word out there, this could end up like a floodgate. Your other option is to contact, you know, BBC Watchdog, Rip Off Britain, Consumer Complaints Places, BBC Panorama. The more of you that complain, the better chance we have of this getting resolved, the more that these people will take you seriously, okay? They're not interested if I phone up because I'm a disgruntled electrician. But if the public are genuinely phoning up and complaining, landlords are complaining, something will happen, okay? So what is the problem with all this? All right, you know, what is the issue? Why am I going on about it? You know, so what? It's only this one person, let's say. Well, do you know what? It was really stressful for that homeowner. They were massive panic, really upset about it. In the middle of selling their house, there were financial complications that suddenly happened because their sale of their flat was delayed, which then meant that they were delaying their house they were moving into. So their chain all of a sudden was held up because of this. And as you can see from the report, there was no need for it. There was financial cost. So the report itself, I think, cost them £150, and the guy was there for about 2 hours. A thorough EICR of a 2 or 3 bed house, you need half a day, easy. And you should be expecting to pay, who knows? I would expect to pay £150 for half a day's work of an EICR, but I would expect a fully completed EICR with proper explanations and a detailed report that's sent as well, you know, with an email describing everything that's happened. These guys lost £5 on their sale of their house in the end. Not just, you know, it's £1,000 for the electrical report that was done, but again, £4,000 for the boiler being changed. And the only thing the guy said was that it was an old boiler. You could probably do with it being changed. It was not unsafe. And as any gas engineer will probably tell you, the older boilers, they go on forever. They're really easy to repair and replace. So again, more financial cost, as they were then advised to get a second opinion. So, you know, they've had to pay for my time as well. More stress. When I complained how worthless the report was, showed them everything that I've shown you in a detailed report. Again, you know, it just ruins the trade for everybody, because all tradespeople get tarnished with the same brush as well. And I promise you, we're not all like that. I was on Twitter, you know, I've been on Twitter for a long time, and I constantly get new build people come up on my feed, and they're complaining about tradespeople being untrustworthy and shoddy and cutting corners. And it's not everyone, it's not all of us. We're getting outnumbered because of the low levels of incompetence that are being brought into the industry, but it's not all of us. And I promise you, the ones that care are trying to fight it. So back us up, help us out. These worthless certificates prove nothing in the way of safety. And all they do is devalue what we do and devalue the trade. To my knowledge, there is and never has been any protection mechanic to enforce or reprimand someone who has failed in their duty of care within the electrical industry. Again, we've seen the electricity work regulations. I don't know anyone that's been prosecuted for fraudulent EICRs or electrical installation certificates or domestic installations who've been prosecuted under the electricity at work regulations. I just don't get it. And I've complained. I know loads of people that have complained. Nothing seems to be done, okay, in my opinion. And I hope that somebody watching this can prove otherwise. So it begs the question, why are certificates that are found to be fraudulent or incompletely carried out, why are they not dealt with by their membership scheme? Why aren't more people prosecuted under Electricity at Work Regulations 1989? Why are people still putting their faith in the membership schemes? Okay, why is that still happening? Why are people told everywhere they go, look for the badge, look for the badge, look for the badge? It will prove competency. You'll get a trusted, registered electrician, all this kind of stuff, when that clearly isn't the case. Why are people being told to use competent person schemes when they have no authoritative powers whatsoever? They cannot do anything other than remove that person from their scheme, which they won't do because then that would be a loss of revenue. So who is advising the government that these schemes are working? Because the evidence suggests differently, okay? So you've got to ask, the government have to ask themselves the question. We're being advised that this is all working, but if you look online, it clearly isn't. There's a lot of disgruntled people out there across the whole of the board, landlords, homeowners, tenants, electricians, tradespeople. If it's working, why are people complaining? You have to ask yourself whether the public really are being protected. Because I hope I've proved today, with this report, that clearly isn't the case. So what could the solution be? And again, this is just some ideas that I'm throwing out there because something needs to change. I think we need a new system which proves competency and qualifications, like the License to Practice scheme run by SparkSafe LTP. They actually go to the bother of checking that people's certificates are valid, that they've completed the right level of training, okay? We need new industry leadership and representation, because who we have at the moment, they're not competent. They're out of touch. They either don't know what's going on the shop floor, or they don't care. It's that management iceberg that you can see on, the iceberg of incompetence, or iceberg of ignorance, I think it's called. So research it, the iceberg of ignorance. The top managers have no clue what's going on from the shop floor. We need a government-run scheme that can be put under public scrutiny and is also open to the Freedom of Information Act, so that we can get the results that we need to prove that it is working, to prove that these things that are put in place are actually effective. Because at the moment, these businesses that are running it, they don't have to give us any information whatsoever. They can sweep it under the carpet and hide it all away. Training needs to be addressed. At the moment, we've got training where people are being led through exams by assessors because no one's allowed to fail, in my opinion. We need to bring back the original City and Guilds 2391 inspection and testing qualification because it had a high failure rate. And the reason that it had a high failure rate was because it worked. It proved competence. So why are people suddenly passing now? The answer is it's too easy. They're being led through it. It doesn't prove competency, okay? We need to use up-to-date, cutting-edge software. So there's some software out now by the Compliance Workbook, okay, where it checks certification. It checks the validity of all the certificates issued. It goes through it and it points out errors and flaws, shows you how, quality that report actually is. So, even landlords, if you've got lots of properties that are being inspected regularly, get in touch with the Compliance Workbook. They can put any certificate through their system, okay, through their software, and it will highlight all the flaws with that certificate and code them and show you what's wrong, okay? at which point you can then go back to the installer and say, or the the inspector, and say, what the hell is going on? We need actual prosecutions. We need these schemes to prosecute their members, okay, under the electricity at work regulations. Without enforcement, it's a free-for-all. Imagine if we didn't have police. It wouldn't be long before people just started doing what they like when they like. But the threat of having police there, the threat of being, prosecuted or arrested or going to jail is enough to keep most of us on the straight and narrow. And that's exactly what we need in the electrical and gas industry as well. We need people to be prosecuted. We need a real threat so that people stay on the straight and narrow, okay? Because at the moment, it's a free-for-all. We need the competent person schemes to be held accountable for their members, okay? Only by doing that will they have a vested interest in making sure that their members fulfill a certain criteria. If their members keep coming up as, right, he's failed, he's done this, they've done that, she's done this, and it keeps coming up with the same people, then the schemes are more vested to do something about that, okay? They're not going to want bad publicity or to be held accountable themselves. We need a complaints procedure that should actually exist, where the schemes actually investigate their members, because it's all on paper. It says it's all there, but the reality is very different. And the other thing that we need to happen is that if a certificate like the one I've just shown you gets reported, okay, the competent person scheme shouldn't just look at that one certificate. They should look at all the certificates that that person has completed. They should all be checked. Okay, what's the point in just checking one? Doesn't make any difference. You've got to check all of them. How are you going to do that unless you've got all those certificates to hand? Okay. So we need training for first offenders or genuine mistakes, because most people want to improve. They don't want to be bad. They don't want to make mistakes. They don't want to be incompetent, but they need training. They need help. And it shouldn't cost them money. The help and training should be free. It should be provided by the competent person scheme that they're with. It should be a free thing, okay? And if they don't improve or they don't show any signs of wanting to be different, there should be fines in place and or imprisonment for repeat offenders, okay? It's the only way to weed out the people that shouldn't be here. So if in order for all of that to happen, we need an accessible database of all certificates issued, like the MOT system. So basically, every certificate ever generated is kept on a database for scrutiny, so people can go back through those certificates. You could then, as well, use the compliance workbook, for instance, software to check all those certificates and highlight them. I mean, what an amazing place that would be. And then finally, only people that have had sufficient training by way of an electrical apprenticeship should be allowed to enroll to complete EICRs, okay? After all, how can you protect the public if you haven't got a proven working knowledge of electrical installation? How can you do that if you've not had experience, or you've not been told, you've not been shown, you've not been guided? Because currently, at the moment, anyone can do this course, no previous experience, and then they can enroll on a 15-day training course, domestic installer course, and register with a competent person scheme. And personally, if I was a homeowner, I wouldn't want that in my house. So thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, then please get in touch. As always, please like, subscribe, share this video. Let's get this message out there, because these messages are important. It's the only way that anything is going to change. So please share it with homeowners, share it with tenants, share it with landlords. Let's get it out there. Thank you for watching. Take care.